Hi, and welcome to a new episode of DNA of Games, the disability, neurodiversity, and accessibility of games. And this week we have our guest Dominic Shaw of Ukie on an extra special longer episode due to Dom being a very good talker. Check it out. Hi, welcome to another episode of DNA of Games, a podcast by ManyCat. And today I am really excited because this is probably one of my favourite people in the industry. It's Dominic Shaw, who is the EDI coordinator for Ukie. And if you've not heard of him, you probably met him without realising, he's involved with so much in the industry, and it's so much that is important and, important for change in the industry, I think. I'm sure, Dom would love to hear more of me promoting him and be like, yeah, everybody loves Dom. But, do you want to say hello, Dom?
Hello, everyone listening in. That's not the case. I normally am the one doing the praising of Chris and anyone else. But I will say it is nice to know that all the work I do is valued. So as Chris mentioned, I'm the Equalities, Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator for Ukie, who is the trade association for video games and interactive entertainment in the games industry. I do all forms of equality, diversity and inclusion work for them. May that be running their member group for EDI, taking on projects and campaigns. But one of the biggest and probably one of the most rewarding aspects of my role and responsibilities is managing the Raise a Game initiative, which is all about bring forthing. Don't think that's the right word.
The bring forward,
Bringing long-term change and impact through EDI into the games industry through, may that be guidance, activities and events, or one-to-one engagements with companies to really get the changes that they want and need into the sector without, I think a key important note to kind of highlight about Raise the Game is, one, it's an industry initiative, not a solely Ukie initiative, because we not only have founding pledge partners who help fund the pledge, but equally we are coming in and pledge more as holding hands and leading the way rather than we are doing it best, because there are places where Ukie needs to improve.
Yeah.
And we do that with industry rather than being the on the pedestal perspective. So that's one notice I'd just like to mention. Another one is that the Raise the Game initiative is free. Ukie membership
this is the plug-in for the Raise the Game for other developers that are listening in and thinking.
Well, it's just I just thought it was good to bring this up because the three common things I normally have is at Ukie's, and it's like we manage and facilitate it, but it's an industry wide. It's free. It's not like Ukie membership where you'd have to pay.
Yeah.
And then the other aspect, I totally just got dropped from my mouth.
Forget. I love the Raise the Game. Like you said, it's an industry movement. I think maybe the words it's like you said, it's not just Ukie. It's about helping everybody in the industry sort of move together, and everybody's kind of got their valid points of putting into it, and you can feel like as a company or as individuals that you can sort of raise your voice on concerns or areas of improvement, or just really to help champion those sort of diversity and inclusion areas. I think it's done really well, and I hope it continues to do really well with more and more companies getting involved. Obviously, we'll put a link in in below this video, and also obviously you can just go to Raise the Game, isn't it? If you type that raisethegame.com or something.
Literally just raisethegame.com. Trademark impending.
But so yeah, Dom, obviously I know you, but I don't really know maybe as much detail I would like. Sometimes I think, I wonder how Dom got here, and I've obviously know bits and pieces of your career journey in your life, as I do consider you a friend, but it'd be interesting for the listeners and for myself as well, just to know about your journey to games, you know, whether that's starting from school to now and sort of the career path that you went through. I think it'd be really interesting to find out more about that. So, you know, how did you find like coming up at school, and was games something that you were always aimed at, or was it something that it was influenced later?
Definitely influenced later. So I very much was the type of kid that would just do school because I had to, because I was told to, and then go home and play games all day. And you know, I'm quite blunt about that. Obviously, you know, Ukie is an organization champions education through our digital schoolhouse program and our Ukie students program, but at the same time, I really want to be transparent about, you know, like my kind of journey, because you know, you if you absolutely know from the minute you have existence. And when I say that, because obviously we're born, but not everyone remembers that actual birth of coming out, and obviously memory comes at different points in your life. So for me, you know, the earliest memory comes from being like 4 years old, and you know, existing. So for me, it wasn't until I got to year 9, which would have been between 2007 and 2008. Hopefully, I'm remembering that correctly. So during that year, I'd still be doing the same, like just going to school because I was told to, having no prospects on, you know, where to go, what to do, just living in the moment. Which, you know, when you acknowledge the moment, it can be a positive. But for a kid that had no prospects of the future, that kind of mentality isn't always the best. But again, I was still enjoying life. But to get to the point, I was very much an avid Blockbusters user. RIP Blockbusters. I rent games, complete them within the 2 weeks or the week, depending, because they changed the model where if it's a new content, you get it for a week, then later on it was 2 weeks. But nevertheless,
Bit late for that customer feedback. Let go.
Yeah,
Let it go.
I'm just like nearly 20 years too late. But I went in there one day, and pretty much every game that they had on offer for Xbox 360 I'd already claimed, I'd already played.
Yeah.
So it was quite late, you know, and we weren't going to go until I picked something. By order of my decree, not my parents' decree. So I kind of didn't, you know, spent extra time trying to look, and then I found this one game that I'd, you know, no prior knowledge to, no awareness of before seeing it there and then, which was called Mass Effect. And so I was like, oh, just pick it up, put it in, bada boom, and you know, took it back, not thinking how actual influential it would be to my life, because I think it was that night or the next day, I put it in, and I just remember the introduction so vividly that first time, and I was like, huh?
And then, like it like sort of when you picked up Mass Effect, it's just like the holy choir music started playing and the light just beamed onto you, like.
I would say not. I would say that moment came when I arrived to the Citadel. In the game, if you arrive at the Citadel, that was the moment where I was like, now I'm in for a ride. So I ended up playing the game for 200 hours in that 2-week period. And then instead of returning it to the box, I was just like, I want to rent it again. Oh, no, that was it. I put it in the box, and then I was like, I want to rent it tomorrow, because it was like we had like an annual or weekly date or bi-weekly date where we'd go to Blockbusters.
Yeah.
So I was like getting it again. So I got it again and did another 200 hours. So I think I've still, like, if I go on my 360, I think my first playthrough was at least 436 hours plus, maybe more. So within a month, I was pretty much obsessed and absolutely loved it. So by that second time, I completed the game, and I thought to myself, you know, I really want to learn more. So at the time, which is still crazy to think, like 2007/8 YouTube isn't where it is today, where you get tons and tons of different content. It was pretty much either the goofy, funny camera videos or just videos of cats. Probably got his name from many cats. He was just like, "There's many cats here."
Don't tell them my trade secrets.
But so I looked on YouTube for videos and I found one called Sci-Fi for Mass Effect, and it was a behind the scenes. And obviously, you know, at the time, behind the scenes were quite stylized because, like, you know, I not recently, but I'd definitely say during the last 2 years, I look back at like all the videos I'd stored up on my 360 and some of the game trailers and behind the scenes videos back then, and it was very much more seen as a, oh, this has never been done, let's make it cinematic experience. But it was worth it because, you know, I watched the Sci-Fi, and at one point during it they said you can get a career in games, and it was, you know, it'd be really influential, and I was like, what? I can actually make this like a job, a career. So I was just like instantly hooked, and I did, you know, I looked through as much of Google and Wikipedia for knowledge as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then, you know, from that onwards, which was a bit fortunate for me because it was just before my GCSEs, like select GCSEs, which again, don't know if those exist anymore, but they did back in my day, kid.
Oh no, kids get numbers these days. They don't even get letters.
So,
did you ever like start sort of saying to you, like your parents or your teachers, "Oh, you know, actually, I'm really interested in games and I can do, you know, a career in games," or was it very internalized and something that you were still sort of investigating and wanting to learn more about?
Very, very much so, minus the articulation there. It was very much, I can work in games. I want to work in games. And then I did the research, and then it became more articulated as I did more research, and you know, discovering that, for example, my local college had a games development course. That kind of gave me prospect. So for my GCSEs, and plus, you know, a big thing that probably is minus from the story is I'm also autistic, and at the time I didn't know, but I've been dyslexic all my life as well. So kind of considering those factors in as well. During school, I was part of the special support kind of. I was about to say regime, and then I make it sound like.
Well, I don't know. Like, it feels like it was like back then. It was just like, you know, if you were like needed any like, you know, special assistance from like, you know, they get the elusive like, you know, special assistant or whoever, like just this random person who will come in like, I'm going to make you better at mainstream. Like, oh, all right. Good luck with that, love.
Which was the case, and then equally you could see it as like special assassins, but that's my imagination starting to pick up. But because I was a part of the SEN department, I obviously told them, and they helped with the college, kind of looking into the college, because back at the time, they probably had a website, but it wasn't really as good. Well, maybe actually, or maybe I just didn't know a college would have a website and they showed me it. But nevertheless, I looked at the criteria, and I just remember that I was told that obviously I'd have to get English and math grades. So I was like, okay, I have something to work towards. But then I also chose. So for me, I chose IT because it was obviously at the time. I mean, now hopefully schools have much more variety with those kind of creative and tech courses or material that they can.
Oh no, they do coding and all sorts these days.
Well, I wouldn't say I did programming, but for example, IT was the closest we could get to anything related to games back when I was at school.
With the you know the SEN staff themselves, like how supportive were they when you said, "Oh, I'm going to do something in games"? I've seen like this college does like games development style courses. Were they like, "Oh yeah, let's get you into there," or were they just confused and like, "Why would you want to do that?" Like, I'm interested to know whether they were like, oh yeah, let's totally go for it, or they were a bit like, unsure.
Emerging of the two, because I think they didn't realize that it was a thing, and I was almost teaching them that it was.
Yeah.
And eventually, and later on, down in my journey, I'll come back to how I kind of helped inspire that more. But it was very much, they were very supportive because, like I mentioned, going from the kid that just wanted to just leave, get out as soon as possible, to someone who actually was like, I may stay and read a book.
It's like, I might actually consider this education that people have been talking about.
And that is obviously not as blunt as that, but I think that's what they saw. They saw that I actually, obviously everything that I'd learned had been applied in my brain somehow, but the fact that I was willing
You're
to
engaging with it for once. You're like, I want, you can see I think that's good that you can see that the passionate side of you, and like, oh, obviously Dom's really interested in this. Like, first time he's actually spoke up and said, oh, he's really interested in something like this, and he wants to, go into this like college. He said he'd never go to college. So did you end up onto that?
This is true.
Did you end up on that course then, or was it a different path when you got to sort of college and that? Were you aiming for like university, for example, or were you just like looking at the college course as a starting place?
Well, this is so very much so. Along with IT, I did product design, which was probably I was fortunate enough that our school had that, and then there was nothing else. And I was lucky enough, because I was part of the SE again, I didn't need to have a fourth course. So the third course I chose, which actually did end up helping me a bit, because I wouldn't be doing things like this, which was drama. And obviously it's acting, but it's also communication with people. So that kind of helped. But to answer your question, from that point, I mean, it's weird for me to think about it in the sense of saying it's the normal pathway, because obviously, not just like my presence at school, but like going all the way back to when I was born. It's like when I was diagnosed with autism, I was diagnosed when I was a baby, and that's how bad my autism was. And it was so obvious to doctors that they were like, we could, your son's autistic. And then they did the official forms, and because it was at birth, it was so much easier. But then they were able to confirm it, and they kind of said to my mum, you'll be lucky if your son ever holds a pencil right. So good luck with that.
I imagine, even because I could consider you not that old, but even then, in this short amount of time, the attitude, I guess, towards autism was still like, oh, this baby is a no hoper, like, oh, I've got autism, it's basically gonna be a drain on your life or whatever. It's never gonna be fully independent. It's like those sort of bad stereotypes from very 20 years ago and that, which is not that.
This isn't long.
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost most of my life. And I mean, even then, it's like, this autism and such wasn't really seen until the early 19th/18th century. But that's more me getting confused, because when it's got the 18, it's meant to be called the 17th. So I might be saying it wrong, and it might be the 18th century, which has got the 19 in front of it. But nevertheless,
yes, please, fact checkers, do not come for Dom.
But to be fair with you, like, I could have been a history whiz. That was actually my only subject that I got. So before GCSEs, we did have the numbers, and I was level 6 for history, but I absolutely found it boring. So, and that's just me.
That level 6 history is always on his CV.
Well, that's the thing. If you like history, absolutely go for it. But for me, I just found it like a still, and even today, like, I really like it's cool, but it definitely doesn't like grab me. But
but back to obviously you chosen your sort of GCSE subjects and that,
did
it get you on that course? I think that's what everyone wants to know. Did you get on the course, Dom?
Yes. So I did get on the course, and I went to the course. I did go and actually try out one or two other courses. Okay. So It was quite, and again, and that's why I wanted to bring up the attitudes around autism.
Yeah.
Because, I would say it's only in the last 5 years, if I'm going to be frankly honest, where I've started to see people actually be empathetic or inclusive. Because either you'd get people who pity,
Yeah.
or you get people who have this weird hatred.
Yeah.
And mainly, obviously, it's a bit like the further spectrum of special needs to do with the brain or neurodiversity, is people think your intelligence is lower, or
Yeah.
you're not at the same capability of them, and that's absolutely wrong, 100%.
Yeah.
The only truth is that we are different, but that's it. It's not an intelligence thing, because
Yeah.
I mean, I've met some people who wouldn't be like back in the olden days of those attitudes, which is only, like I say, about 10 years or
Yeah, but like I say, it's
ago.
not that long ago, so those attitudes are still prevalent. There's a lot of people that still think that, like whether they, learn that off their own parents, etc. It's still something that's prevalent, I would say, in society, of those like shaking off those old attitudes, because it does take a
Absolutely.
while to shake them off. Like it's not an overnight sensation and everybody's accepting. It does take a while to keep reaffirming the message and reaffirming everything.
But I would definitely
Yeah,
say, for people on the spectrum, it's so important to advocate, because I mean, this year, instead of being World Autism Awareness Month / day / week, it's been changed to World Autism Acceptance Month
yeah,
/ day / week, because I think more people, because it's not just the kind of harassment aspect, but like
yeah,
even people within the community. It's like many people don't get diagnosed until they're in their later life, especially for people who identify as women or marginalized gendered folks
yeah. I
who.
see. Yeah, this is kind of a common thing that I see in the industry, which is good that people are finally getting the diagnosis. But it seems very common in our industry, in the games industry, that they're getting those late diagnoses of like being adults, and then finding out, oh, you just happen to be neurodivergent. That's kind of why the way you process things is completely different to everybody else. And it's kind of like a shame, because you think of how long people have struggled maybe to sort of try and conform to something that they'll never conform into, and then to be like,
Exactly.
get that strength of belief that it's like, oh, you are different in a way, but it's not a not a life
And
ending thing.
it's so important to note, because obviously, like, it's presented differently in people, because it's so individualized. It just changes. So again, I like to do tangents, but just to make sure we go back to the original question, yeah, with the
That's just cool.
attitude
Yeah,
and reduced awareness back then, to say that I had the standard education journey of going from school to college, and then, I mean, before I move on to the next stage. So yes, I went to the college, but I also I did interview at another college, which the attitude of my autism was really prevalent. Like, I only said to them, I have autism,
yeah,
and in one way, someone could say, "Oh, them reaching out and seeing what I need
yeah,
could have been a positive." But I think for me, the way they did it was, this college did it. It was really negative, because instead of asking what I need, they were like, "Oh, we're going to give you this. We're going to give you someone who's going to guide you, who's going to be there to support you all the way on the day for the looking around and
yeah.
interview." Kind of like, it's not the fact. Again, it's nice that there's that support, but it's not the fact they asked. They just assumed,
Like,
and
we got this person to supervise you and make sure you don't get into trouble, you little scamp.
exactly. And it's like, I don't need that. And it was a bit awkward, because that person was like, "Hi, I'm here," and I'm like, "Hi, yeah, I don't really need you, but okay." Um, and then so we looked around this place, because they had a games course as well.
Yeah,
And then I had an interview with the course leaders, and the irony is that person wasn't in the room when I had the interview with the course leaders, which would have actually been interesting to note, because when I was talking to the course leaders, that I mean, I don't know if they're still in industry today and work in the game, work in
yeah,
games education, but if I don't know, again, they might have changed their faces. I can't really remember that far back on their names, but obviously the institute, I obviously don't want to name drop the institution, so that's why. But let's just say, if I ever saw the course leaders again in life, I would very much be like, well, I think I proved you wrong, because they were pretty much like, oh, we see that you have autism. We don't really think you're going to be doing great on this course. We don't think you'll make the cut. It's a very hard industry. But because
again,
you've met
assumptions there, isn't there? Like they didn't engage in a conversation with you about your ability, you know, what you wanted to do. It was just kind of
exactly.
like you can't do this.
I mean, quite literally, they towards the end of it, they were like, "But we do see, like, and this is not positive for them. This is more like education bureaucracy, kind of in enforcing them to ensure that they do it. But they were like, we do see though that you have got the necessary grades, but we just feel, you know, with your autism and such, you won't be capable." And so even though I liked like the facilities, I pretty much left that and gone, wow, really? Did I just like wow? So so my first option of the college that I originally found, that was also like literally 5 minutes away from my school, I ended up picking, and it was really good because actually, I don't know. Again, this is going to be a bit weird to say. I think I learned more of the actual informational and technical aspects about the industry more in college than I did to eventually in university. Because kind of to pivot the story a bit, I did do the college course. I got good grades, and then I went to university. But just having it as a reflective piece, I actually learned more about the technical aspects of the industry during college than I did at university. But I will say,
and that's not getting shunned by the universities in the UK.
I mean, it's just the truth of it. And but the important thing with the university is, I chose one in London. I mean, technically, you can see the college I chose on my LinkedIn. If LinkedIn is still relevant when this podcast goes up. But just to not date this too much.
Yeah, I do.
I'm doing it for comedy. I'm doing it for the comedy, not for the birds. Although I am just like a Charmander, flame throwing everywhere.
Okay, but, back to obviously your career journey. Obviously, you did the university part. Did that? So obviously, you felt college was better than university, but did university then lead you to your first job, or was it kind of like a, you know?
So this is an important distinction. So when I say better, I mean from what they supplied and the technical knowledge. So like, you know, college would give me all the resources, wouldn't expect me to pay out of my own money to get things, and it gave me the core details. You know, this is what the industry looks like. This is the types of jobs you can get. But university, although, you know, it doesn't help that I chose to go on a course called Game Cultures, which when I originally left uni, most people asked, "What is that?" It didn't help that I chose a course that had that kind of let's just say hippie perspective of, yeah, dude, it's game cultures, man. But what I will say is, through that perspective, we really learned the indie game developer experience, and where we may have not got so much of the standard technical skills. What we did gain in return is a full scope of how the games industry looks like, an overview of how it all links together. And we got to really try out different experiences, not just by discipline, but by actual events and such. So, you know, we got the opportunity to create an accessible one-button game during a project called Tangible Play, which we did with the charity Lighter Lives, who I still to this day talk to. And also, going back to my previous point of how my games education and love of the industry would come back to support the SEN staff of my old school. During that particular project, I actually, because I was the producer for it, and we had to do QA, we had to do some sort of QA.
Yeah.
So instead of, and this might be a bit of a burn to my previous classmates. So if any of them do even listen to this, apologies, but I will say it. I was able to differentiate my group's QA process by actually having students of my old school try out the game, and just a range of kids, which again was part of the target demographic of getting kids to play, while everyone else got other groups to play theirs from our class. So I kind of felt like differentiating, being a unique selling point here. But so I went back to my old school, not only showed off the game, but also gave a talk to students, and kind of that kind of started the kind of work I do for students, because obviously being there, done that as in education, you want to inspire the next generation. So I just wanted to tip it on that. But basically, university gave me those experiences, but also because I chose to go and do it in London. I'd never lived away from home. I'd never been on my own in terms of living before. So on top of not only having a course that at least gave me an overview of the industry and put us in a location optimal for different opportunities, such as volunteering at events and seeing game companies. I was able, should I say, to live in London, experience independence, and really grow as a person. Because like when I was at college, I had the goal of being a game designer, but then literally in my first semester at uni, pretty much changed and wanted to be a game producer, because not only because it kind of suits me better, but because in our first project at uni, we literally, people we'd never met before, get into groups and build a Flash game. And I don't know if this says more about me, but I was one of those people, like normally when they do the comedian picking people for the team scene in TV shows and such, and you always get the last person who never gets picked, or those last groups of people that are formed together. I was pretty much that at university, where literally we were the last remainder of us we just joined as a team, and then I was like, I'll lead this team, I guess. But actually, I'm really glad I did, because I ended up loving it. And throughout the rest of uni, not only did I always try to be a producer when I could in projects, but I also then became course representative. And in my third year, became almost a course leader assistant, not by everything but title and payment, which obviously at the time I just did it because I wanted to get the betterment for my fellow classmates. But actually, obviously, years later, reflecting back, I should have been like, you need to pay me for this. I'm doing like half your job.
So how did this impact then for like your first job? Like, did you did you get into the industry, like an industry job, like in quotations, like straight away, or did you like sort of go work somewhere else first before you actually landed your first job?
So I definitely, so before, I mean, God, you always like you tell one specific part, and then there's all these other parts that add up to it. But specifically on the job part, so that kind of course representative role would kind of sadly repeat itself in my first proper industry job. But just in terms of the gap, I didn't go straight into a job. Pretty much, I wanted summer off, but I thought I'd casually find something, but I didn't. And nowadays, I always tell students, just having the degree doesn't mean you're guaranteed. Which obviously, university isn't what it used to be, where they would put their education first. Nowadays, obviously, there are people within university teams that will do that, but fundamentally, the university is a business, and they want numbers on their courses to fill their pockets. And I was unfortunately a part of that first wave of, and which is still shocking to this day to think, the year above us at university, they were only paying £3,000 across the entire 3 years. So by the end of them graduating, they only had to pay 9k, and that didn't increase. That didn't rise in interest. That was it. They just paid 9k. While it was my year group that was the first, and this was anyone who joined university in 2012 would find that from that point onwards, you not only have to pay 9k per year, but you then also have to abide by the interest taxes and rates that would be applied to you while you're studying, which they never said, which really annoyed me because the way they made their contract, they could simply add that cost or add that detail later.
Luckily I was one of the slip in there before it went up, so I was one of the ones that you hate.
Very annoying.
But yeah, just to sort of keep it moving, Dom, just, then you said you wanted a little break.
So to your original point, so I didn't find anything, and it was only thanks to a previous opportunity that I had gained through university. So I volunteered at Develop Brighton, and I did so between 2013 to 2017. But specifically, while at the first Develop Brighton, I met who would eventually become my CEO at Ukie, Dr. Jo Twist. I met her at that event, and since 2013, I was slowly building a relationship with Jo, or an industry connection with Jo, / relationship with Jo. And at the time, because of my connection with Lighter Lives and kind of advocating for their good work, they invited me to go to the Games Aid check giving ceremony, which I attended, and I saw Jo there. And Jo then introduced me to a certain individual that I will also not name drop because it would eventually turn bad, and this experience kind of links to the whole aspect of knowing your value, which obviously when I was the course leader's assistant at university was a sample of that kind of naivety, but in my first industry role. So I was really excited, and thought, I'm gonna learn how to do well, I gotta say the type of work, and technically you can find out for either ways, but for this podcast I will not name drop. But I was an event intern, and thinking, okay, I'll do a couple of weeks and gain some experience, and hopefully then use that experience to get in. And what it ended up being like is, obviously because of my naivety, I kind of was like, yes, I'll do as much as possible. When actually, if my brain was inserted into me, then I should have said would have said to my younger self, like, you need to pace yourself and make sure that they value you. Because, for example, I did full-time hours, no pay, as an intern, and I was doing it all from home, which I didn't have. I wasn't supplied the equipment. I had to use my own. So I did that for 5 months, and the original plan was only to do it up until Christmas. But then, because I did such good work, they were like, "Oh, we promise you a full-time contract. Oh, come and do this event with us." And after I did their big event in January, which, just to say, I bloody rocked it. And kind of doing 2 months later.
Did that catalyst then into getting, the proper role, like you say, moving on from the internship?
Well, I'd hope so. But again, every experience counts. But I would definitely say my first industry role was, through my naivety as a graduate, I was definitely taken advantage of and mistreated. Because when I got to March of 2016, to have that conversation of payment and getting that full-time contract, I was told by the organization's accountant that, nope, you're going to be considered freelance. I don't know what the word is, but he basically said there's no change to that, and that I would be paid only £800 a month. I was doing full-time hours throughout, I should have been getting 1,400, if not more.
Yeah.
I was being undercut by at least £600 a month, and the reason I was given was because of my age, which at the time I was 21/22.
Yeah.
So that was the cheek of them, but obviously again the naivety of me not to, because I mean I didn't even know what rights I really had as an employee until years later. But like at the time, you know, I should have checked or wished someone told me,
Yeah.
oh, you do know that they can't do that to you because you're over 18, so they have to pay the
Yeah.
same.
So not just to focus on the that bad experience. How did you then become a part of Ukie? Because obviously that's kind of like your golden spot in your career. I would have said.
Well, to kind of fast forward a little bit then, because it wasn't just like the being told, you're not being paid that, but I also took up another role at that company, and ended up staying with them until August of 2016, where they made me redundant. And again, they took advantage of my naivety because they said, "Oh, we'll put you on garden leave." And obviously, with garden leave, you don't have to do any work; you get paid, and you can really spend your time looking for other jobs or
Yeah.
etc. But instead, I was so like, "Oh, I need a reference or I need a recommendation." I was like, "I'll work for it." And instead of them going, "Oh no, this is what garden leave is. You should go look for your next role," they just took advantage of that and never gave me a reference. But what that would do, because this is kind of the teaser, but it's also the importance of time and place. Because after that role, so I left it in August, and it wasn't until September, October
Yeah.
where I'd seen Joe again, and Joe had told me because the year before in 2015, just before I was ready to graduate, I actually applied for Ukie's PA maternity cover position at the time, because Claire was having Claire, who used to work at Ukie, was having her second child. So I actually applied for that role, and I was the second running. And it was a bit ironic because now looking back at it, it's like if they had chosen me before that role, things might have been different. But I didn't get that role. But then I got to meet more of the team, and the irony is that the person they chose, who I still like see sometimes on LinkedIn, she actually declined it 2 weeks later because she wanted to go more into journalism. And then the person they got to replace her, I was told, was really sweet but incapable of the role. So by the time of me coming back on Joe's radar in September 2016, she was like, "Oh yeah, we really had some trouble with this. Do you want to come and fill that role for the last 2 months of it before Claire comes back?" So I said yes. So I did a temporary admin assistant role at Ukie. But the importance of me saying that is, it's really weird to think how the right time and place works in mysterious ways, because Ukie at that time isn't where it is now. And I'd say that's a good thing for both me and Ukie, because Ukie's obviously improved since. But for me, I didn't really find my place with the organization at the time. But again, skipping some experience and fast forwarding to 2019, after I'd been going in and out of jobs, I'd gone back to retail, but I'd also done biz dev, I'd done QA, play testing, I've done all sorts between 2016 to 2019. And my latest venture was after another questionable experience that would actually come to be valuable to my now job, which was also the event intern role as well, valuable. But after that particular second bad job experience, I then discovered Autistica, and they were launching their Autistica Play initiative in 2019. And actually, I went to their launch event, and I absolutely resonated with it, and said at the day at the event, I want to be an ambassador for you guys. I've never done charity work or anything, but he's bringing me on. So for the rest of 2019, I was pretty much a full-time ambassador. And a key difference is I did get paid by Autistica for my expenses. So again, unlike previous experiences that I've in this podcast, Autistica, although couldn't pay me like a full-time employee, still reimbursed me and made sure my time was seen and valued.
I just just so it can keep moving. Like, how did then you came? Because obviously you eventually came back to Ukie. Like, how did that happen? Was it just a role came up and you were like, I'm going for that?
So I did a talk at the Best Places to Work 2019 awards that Games or Gamer Network / GamesIndustry.biz put on, and I did my talk on behalf of Autistica, and it went so well that I brought up a tip about clapping, where instead of the loud claps, you just shake your hands in the air.
Funny enough, I remember that. Like, I wasn't there, but I've seen like
I mean, that's what I mean. The fact that you acknowledge that, because the whole room, like I said that in the middle of my talk, and it wasn't. And then when I finished my talk, the whole room did it. So the fact they actually listened was so vital, because also Jo was there, and she said, "Oh, you know, we've got another maternity cover position, but unlike before, Dom, you're obviously I'd really like to have you in mind and actually have you meet with our new senior operations manager who would who'd work with you and lead you on your role." So I was almost given because of that relationship, I was given an exclusive interview with the senior operations manager to see whether I would be up for the role. Because again, never been office manager before. And so I chatted to the senior operations manager at the time, who was Sophie Magara, and we just connected really well. And I ended up getting it straight away. And then later on we met at the Ukie Christmas party for 2019. So that was the day I officially got the confirmation. But I wouldn't start at Ukie until the 13th of January specifically. And that was obviously as office manager. But yeah, again, either in this podcast or another opportunity, that initial getting the role at Ukie would not be the end of my journey.
Obviously you touched on before about how your autism has played a part in your life, and that do you feel like it's really has shaped sort of the path you've taken, or whether that's like because of society's expectations on you as an autistic individual, or do you think I didn't really do anything different?
I mean, it's a hard one, because like from normalizing behaviors and being inclusive, I should really say that I just was me and did it. But I would probably say more from an advocating side and kind of trying to push forward, I'd say it definitely was. I mean, I'm, as I hear this a lot, and I think I agree with the saying, like, I am a neurodiverse individual in a neurotypical world. So you're already seen as almost alien. And obviously, like, again, as we mentioned earlier, attitudes are changing. But the fact I had medical professionals when I was born saying I did not achieve much, and then look at me now where I am. I take that as massive. It's a driving force for me. It's motivation, but it also just seeing how far I've come. It's not only comforts me, but I also use it to inspire others, because and also, not to discredit their journeys, some of the people I meet who are also either autistic or just widely neurodiverse, so their journeys are absolutely amazing too. So it's more for me to share these aspects of my journey, just to either, if you're in a place where you don't feel confident or you feel disheartened, there to inspire, while for those who have done and achieved equally so and know it, it's more about high-fiving each other and just keep powering on and showing, actually, don't let the attitudes of society pull you down. If you've got the passion and the love and the drive, keep going forward. And if you need a helping hand, people are here for you. You've just got to obviously sometimes look for it, but sometimes reach your hand out and wait for someone to grab, because it will be grabbed. It's just and to make it sound more positive thing, it will be grabbed by it will be an ally to you.
Like I think the more conversations people actually have, like yourself, like actually saying, yeah, I've had this, autistic journey or whatever, what to call it, or you really sort of be proud of the neurodiversity of yourself. Like other people that may be neurodiverse themselves will go, oh, Dom's all right with talking about it. I feel more okay about talking about it now, and it's got to have that like domino effect with more and more people. The whole reason why this podcast exists is to be, make the industry more comfortable with talking about disability and neurodiversity. Because we have to be more comfortable, and then it doesn't feel abnormal to be an autistic individual, and it's not abnormal to have a disability.
Absolutely, and I think it's so vital to also note that even if you do not not every neurodiverse person or autistic person has to be that advocator, because again, you can just live your life. But that's also why I think it's important for me to acknowledge that I purposely want to try and be some sort of role model, because then that also allows those people who just want to live their lives to not get the questions and for the questions to come my way, because I'm comfortable doing that. And and so obviously, hopefully, like people don't massively disagree, like, oh, he said that he should be destroyed. I mean, generally cancel culture isn't great, but I'm the core of helping hand approach and support.
Definitely.
But I would definitely say it's been vital, and it has. I'd say what I normally say is it's a part of me, and acknowledging it allows me to know my limits, comfortabilities, and barriers. But it doesn't define me, because as I've mentioned during this podcast, there's elements of me who play games, or there's elements that I didn't even pick upon, which would just make this podcast episode way too long about the journeys from retail and other places. But again, but to be fair with everyone who's listening, I am naturally a tangentist and
love. Tangentist? I don't like you saying that. You are what I would say a natural storyteller. So you are a natural storyteller, and that you like to take people through a journey, and you want to explain how you got somewhere. And it's no good just going, oh yeah, I work retail, I worked an office job, now I'm the EDI person at Ukie, because that just makes
I do love that, so I really appreciate that. I've had people I would say, oh, you're a passionate speaker, and then I have my mum going, you just don't know when to shut up. And I'm just like, yeah, all of those are very true.
Yeah. In another life, you made the Game of Thrones series, and you're still writing them right now.
I was the Game of Thrones series, but then again, I say it like that. I have no idea. All I know in Game of Thrones is the extreme visual aspects of the show. That's all. But I will say that I do watch another HBO show that's equivalent in terms of popularity on the platform, which is Euphoria, with the Spider-Man MJ actress, which was really
and that's Dom's attempt to connect with the Zoomers, the Generation Z. Look,
no,
Dom's still young, he's still hip, he's still with it.
but I love conversation. I love talking to people and having things flow. And again, I really make note of my tangents, because obviously sometimes I'm talking about this one thing and then suddenly, why are we talking about IP, or why are we talking about this? And I guess best way to describe it, which is also a compliment for me, is that I am a natural storyteller. So I really like that, and I will be taking it.
And to finish this wonderful story of Dom in our podcast, we really like to ask our guests, what's the gaming moment that stands out to them. And I think you've touched upon it right at the start when you talked about Mass Effect, but is there something else now that is your pinnacle gaming moment, or do you think or is Mass Effect is the the linchpin of your whole gaming life and career?
I mean as a profession and as a career, it is definitely the highlight, because obviously, like I said, it's inspired my career, and look at me now. I'm in a role which one point I just wanted to highlight. I'm in a role not only because being an autistic, dyslexic, LGBTQ plus identifying person, I have that life experience to aid to the role, but also that keen knowledge and passion. But equally, the other kind of my triforce of motivation for this is obviously that lived experience, wanting to help others and make sure they have a better experience. But also, like I've picked on upon, I had a really bad first experience, and then there was a second experience that was probably almost worse. That I obviously won't go into detail because that's for maybe a returning guest episode.
So Dom's already championing to get himself onto another episode down the line. You'll have to continue listening to this series to see whether Dom comes back or not.
Oh my god, that should be like a little game. Like, guess what episode Dom will be back on? And you're like, scheduled for episode 1,000 to make sure. But the second bad job, they particularly discriminated against my autism and used it against me. And the reason why, obviously, again, I'm not even joking. I'm saving that for a potential returning episode if I ever get the chance to. But the reason why I wanted to bring it up towards this end point here as well is because, having lived through some of those really bad experiences, I want to see better from the industry. And again, when I think of the Mass Effect series, I think that's a series that really encompasses, those values because it knows what it is. You can see it as a conversation simulator, or it doesn't have this particular gameplay, but it knows what it is. It tries to be inclusive by bringing characters in, but it also has areas to improve, and I think it's a good metaphor or category to the industry. But in terms of just other gaming moments I'd like to mention, there's tons, but I'm probably gonna
so nice and punchy and quick.
But to be punchy and quick, the kind of two other moments I'd like to highlight is Rocksteady's Batman Arkham Asylum, the moment of just getting out onto Arkham Asylum Island and going and looking around just made me go, not only one, can IP games be done right, but two, this is the power of games just to feel this immersive. But more on the inclusive side, Life is Strange, absolutely a game. I mean, heck, every entry into the series, even number 2, which is probably the most disregarded in the series of 4 games now. But
I just go about the prequel.
Well, that's the prequel, the first game, and the third game are seen in good regards, and it's the second game that's normally, when I hear about it, then people are like, did they even do a second game? The first and the third game.
But why did you like it then? Like, why did you like Life is Strange?
I think Life is Strange definitely made me feel like, and again, when we think about kind of LGBTQ plus representation in games, indie game developers do it so much more. But I think for me, again, Mass Effect does have some of that, but like, I would say that's again one of the areas it needs to improve on. While Life is Strange, seeing the kind of blossoming relationship between Max and Chloe. My gosh, how can I forget my spirit animal? Because we share the same birthday. So I deserve a dodgeball to the head for getting that fact. But I absolutely love their relationship, and obviously, regardless if you see it as a friendship or a romance, it's just really representative of the queer experience. So I wanted to just highlight those to show, obviously, the career and inspirational aspect, but also just the general, wow, I am so glad to play games because or look at this queer experience storytelling that I was a part of.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Like, look at like Life is Strange. Like, I'm sort of glad you brought that one up. But yeah, that's all we have time for. Because Dom is the natural chatty man.
And you're also a chatty person, so it's just when you put two chatty people in a room together, get a flock of parrots.
Dom's in very much danger now of being muted, but obviously, this is a special longer episode clearly. But Dom obviously has such an interesting take in his life and getting into games, which I think is really important to hear about. No doubt.
I mean, just don't have a time limit on these episodes. Just let them go. You don't have to say it's a special episode. You can just say
Dom is the special episode, which is extra long. So I'll let you tell the viewer why that is. But no doubt we'll see Dom again in this podcast series, you know, because again, Dom, you're such an interesting storyteller, and I think you've got loads more left to say, and no doubt the viewers will want to hear more from you. You know, just let us know, whether that's commenting down below on the video or just, you know, making sure you like, subscribe, be the very Generation Z aspect of sharing this podcast.
You say that, but you need to win them over and be the true YouTuber or podcast person.
I'm just going to do the reaction face and just have that as a screenshot. But yeah, thank you, Dom. Again, seriously, I am so happy that you're going to be a guest, and no doubt we'll see you again. Is there any like Twitter handle or anything like that you'd like to give out for people to follow you on?
Well, one, I'd like to thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, not just you as a person, but also a pleasure to do opportunities like this. But equally, I would say, if you want to check out the work that I do, the best place to see that is through Raise the Game's website, which is raisethegame.com. We're going through some massive improvements for it as well. So if you instantly look at the page, you'll probably see some of the old kind of material, but then let's say you see this a few months later from the date we're doing this, which is sometime in 2022, which I had to just do that dating because obviously it'd be a bit weird. Like in 2015, someone looks and it's like, I don't see no Raise the Game. But we're doing some really good changes there. And then if you want to catch me on socials, probably the best places to see me within a professional standpoint, because I do have a few channels, but I'd probably say to catch the work or just to chat to me, my Twitter handle is @DominicShaw94, or on LinkedIn, put my name in. But normally I also have the 94 attached to it.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm one of those basic people who is like, I was born in 1994, so I better put that to my name.
Hey, that's a very millennial generation thing. You know, Zoomers won't understand, you know, the
look
joy
at
of
you.
putting your date of birth attach your name. It helps the people that are sweeping data, they're able to extract your data a lot easier.
Wow, so I've just
again, let's say goodbye, Dom. Otherwise, it's going to go on right over an hour. So, again, thank you, Dom. Smile and wave goodbye to the audience. If you're listening to the podcast, he is waving. Thanks again for joining us, and I hope to see you again next time. Remember to like and subscribe to this podcast, whether that's on YouTube or in your podcast broadcasting areas. See you next time.